Welcome back, subbies, or welcome to our channel. If you are new, I am Sherry, and welcome to Talk on This. Guys, if you have not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit the subscribe button. Also hit the notification bell for more videos just like this. Leave us a comment. We love comments on this channel, and also give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed this episode. All right, let's get right into it. Okay, guys, is Bill Gates running the world along with a few others? Where there's money, there's power, but not all power is good power. If it's not Elon Musk trying to take over the population with his Tesla artificial intelligent robots, then we see Bill Gates seemingly trying to control the world population to, quote unquote, have a cleaner planet or a better planet. Guys, I want you to listen to a talk Bill Gates had on innovating to zero. And this is having to do with reducing the carbon emissions in the air in order to control climate change, basically, for a safer and cleaner planet, as he puts it. However, it just reminds me of a talk that President Kennedy did about controlling the weather. I want you to listen to this first, and then we'll come back and talk on this.
Mr. President, honored delegates, ladies and gentlemen, we shall propose further cooperative efforts between all the nations in weather prediction and eventually in weather control. We shall propose, finally, a global systems of communication satellites linking the whole world in telegraph and telephone and radio and television. The day need not be far away when such a system will televise the proceedings of this body to every corner of the world for the benefit of peace.
Yes, we've come a long way in technology since President Kennedy made that speech. But one thing that will never change is that man will never control the weather. And that's where God and science separates. Revelation 16:8 said, the fourth angel poured out his bowl on the sun, and the sun was given the power to scorch people with fire. They were seared by the intense heat, and they cursed the name of God. No matter how man tries to control the climate by reducing the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere or changing the type of energy that's used, there's no way that man will ever be able to control the weather. Now, Bill Gates, I want you to listen to a speech he made, a TED Talk, back in 2010. And he talks about reducing the CO2 level in the atmosphere in order to reduce the heat in the atmosphere, and thus controlling the weather, in his opinion. Now, there's an equation he came up with, and he collaborated with scientists, and they came up with a equation. And I want you to listen to him speak on this equation and how this equation can help protect the planet, in his opinion. And we'll get back and talk on this.
Now, we put out a lot of carbon dioxide every year, over 26 billion tons. For each American, it's about 20 tons. For people in poor countries, it's less than 1 ton. It's an average about 5 tons for everyone on the planet. And somehow we have to make changes that will bring that down to zero. It's been constantly going up. It's only various economic changes that have even flattened it at all. So we have to go from rapidly rising to falling and falling all the way to zero. This equation has 4 factors, a little bit of multiplication. So you've got a thing on the left, CO2, that you want to get to zero. And that's going to be based on the number of people, the services each person's using on average, the energy on average for each service, and the CO2 being put out per unit of energy. So let's look at each one of these and see how we can get this down to zero.
And I hope one of these elements is not people. Why are people even a part of this equation? He talks about the population increasing. And obviously, when the population increases, services are going to increase. Usage of energy will increase. Therefore, you're going to have more emissions of CO2 into the atmosphere. So it's only going to increase. He's talking about reducing the population, thus reducing the amount of emissions in the air. How do you do that? How will you reduce the population? And this is scary because it comes down to a control measure. Are people going to be controlled on how many children they have? Are people going to be controlled on how much energy they use? Is the amount of services going to be regulated per person, per household? How is this going to happen? But the scary thing is reducing the population, in his opinion. If not by those measures, then how are you going to reduce the population? And this is scary. And I want you to hear him explain a little further these elements to reduce CO2 levels in the atmosphere to zero, which is totally impossible. But let's listen and see what else he has to say about this equation. The fact is, people are going to have to use energy. They're going to have to use cars. You can't make all cars electric. You know, this is going to be very costly. You can't make airplanes electric. It is too risky. You know, you need to have fuel. You need to have oil. You need to have fuel, gas, and natural gases. Anyway, guys, listen to what he has to say about this equation in a little bit more detail, and we'll get back and talk on this.
First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%. But there we see an increase of about 1.3. The second factor is the services we use. This encompasses everything: the food we eat, clothing, TV, heating. These are very good things. Getting rid of poverty means providing these services to almost everyone on the planet. And it's a great thing for this number to go up. In the rich world, perhaps the top 1 billion, we probably could cut back and use less. But every year, this number on average is going to go up. And so overall, that will more than double the services delivered per person. Here we have a very basic service. Do you have lighting in your house to be able to read your homework? And in fact, these kids don't, so they're going out and reading their schoolwork under the street lamps. Now, efficiency, E, the energy for each service, here finally we have some good news. We have something that's not going up. Through various inventions and new ways of doing lighting, through different types of cars, different ways of building buildings, there are a lot of services where you can bring the energy for that service down quite substantially. Some individual services even bring it down by 90%. There are other services like how we make fertilizer or how we do air transport where the rooms for improvement are far, far less. And so overall here, if we're optimistic, we may get a reduction of a factor of 3 to even perhaps a factor of 6. But for these first 3 factors now, we've gone from 26 billion to at best maybe 13 billion tons. And that just won't cut it. So let's look at this fourth factor. This is going to be a key one. And this is the amount of CO2 put out for each unit of energy. And so the question is, can you actually get that to zero? If you burn coal, no. If you burn natural gas, no. Almost every way we make electricity today, except for the emerging renewables and nuclear puts out CO2. And so what we're going to have to do at a global scale is create a new system. And so we need energy miracles.
And one of these energy miracles, according to Bill Gates, is TerraPower. Now, TerraPower is a nuclear innovation company founded by Bill Gates himself. And this is supposed to be the new way of getting energy without carbon emission. Now, as you heard Bill Gates say, burning coal and burning natural gas gives off CO2 into the atmosphere. However, according to him, if you use nuclear energy, there's no carbon emission. And that may be a scientific fact. However, how safe is this? He also mentioned in another interview about burning uranium being 1,000,000 times more cost effective than burning coal. But like I said, how safe is this? And are the regulators really regulating this project unbiasedly? Let's take a look at what Bill Gates has to say, and we'll get back and talk on this.
So you're a technological innovator. Can the regulators keep up with you guys?
The regulators are super important. Without them looking at the safety and being extremely rigorous about the safety, the public will never trust these things. So yes, the regulators need to be properly funded. They have to have some incentive, not just to say no to everything.
So are these regulators regulating unbiasedly? That's the question. You know, or is this just overcompensating with something dangerous for where renewable resources are lacking? You know, how safe is this project? You know, and what about radiation? You know, are people going to be safe with the radiation that's going to be given off from this? I wish they would talk more about that. What about what Bill Gates said earlier in his TED Talk when he talked about that equation, reducing the amount of the population? Or is he saying that the population will decrease by 10 to 15% if you use properly vaccines and manage reproductive health? I mean, what exactly is he saying there? You know, that was a little confusing. And then if so, that's very scary because, you know, how will you do that? Anyway, guys, I want you to take a listen to what Bill Gates has to say about this project a little bit more. You know, he's telling us what he's doing, but it's almost as if people can't accept what he's saying, but he's telling us that the population needs to decrease. He's telling us that regulators are being given incentives on this thing. He's telling us in his on his TerraPower mission statement. If you go on to TerraPower, Google it and go on TerraPower, you'll see where the mission statement says independent private funding. That's a mission. You know, they're seeking private funding. Anyway, listen to what he has to say about this project a little bit more. We'll talk on this.
How important do you see the role of international cooperation, for example, through the IAEA, to facilitating the safe and secure deployment of advanced nuclear technologies?
Well, it's absolutely critical. Nuclear is very complicated, and we can't expect every country independently to figure it out. Also, the issues of avoiding proliferation, those are very complicated, and the world depends on the global agency to have that expertise. You know, we don't want to have it so that every country has to have its own nuclear industry. You want, whether it's making fuel, making the parts for the equipment, reviewing the safety. We want the combination of global thinking so that is done the best it can be. So, climate means that we need nuclear solutions, and that's going to only come.
How many countries can we trust with nuclear power, with nuclear energy resources? Is this setting up the world for disaster? Are you putting ammunition in the hands of the enemy? How many people can you trust? Who can you really trust with nuclear power on such a large scale? I want you to listen to what Bill Gates has to say about the funding for this project and projects like this. The climate change conversation has been in the air a long time. And now the governments are actually funding projects like these. Big money is in these areas. And is this really about preserving the planet, or is it about money and control? Listen to what Bill Gates has to say, and we'll get back and talk on this.
Countries are being pressed to come up with commitments that they're going to cut their use of carbon energy. And yet, I want to ask you about the current situation right here in this country. The president is trying to push legislation that would include a lot of money to address in these environmental questions. But you have not just Republicans, but Democrats like Joe Manchin of West Virginia saying, no, we need to cut back on efforts to move to cleaner energy. How do you see what's going on politically?
The infrastructure bill has some really great money to advance green technologies, to fund projects. And the reconciliation bill has a lot of key tax credits to drive the demand for green technology. So if both of those pass, the U.S. will accelerate in a very dramatic way its contribution, not only reducing its emissions, but innovating to drive the price down. Senator Manchin, has spoken about the overall price tag and the incentives in the electricity generation sector, and how he might want to see those be different. The key thing, the ideal thing is, even if these bills, if there's some modest reductions, that they get passed. If we don't get either of these bills, the U.S. will really be absent in driving the cost of green technologies down, which in terms of creating new industries and the jobs in those industries would be a huge missed opportunity for both the U.S. and the world.
And are you sharing your view with members of Congress as they face some of these votes in the weeks to come?
Absolutely. I've actually got two topics that I've been in lots of discussions with members of Congress on. One is funding work to avoid having another pandemic. What is the research and things we need to do there? And the President's Science Advisor, Rick Lander, put forward a plan that we worked with him on that's very good there, but it needs to be funded. And then these climate issues, which now is the time to get serious about those things and tap into U.S. innovation power.
There's a lot of money being generated towards climate change and so-called protecting the planet. A lot of organizations, foundations can get a lot of funding when they get on board this climate change train. Is this just, conversation that has been going around to generate money and power? Or is this a real thing? There is a need to protect the planet from pollutions and these emissions from these large factories. But if that sun is going to shine and the heat is going to increase, there's nothing man can do about it. If God wants that sun to shine and he wants that heat to increase, which it will. It will increase, and Scripture tells us that the planet will get hotter. So hot that people will be scorched to death. This is how hot it's going to be, and there's nothing man can do about it, because this is a natural process, and this is what God is in charge of. And this is where science and God, like I said, separate. There's only so much you can do. You can change the way you manage your natural resources and manage energy resources to protect the planet from harmful emissions, set these places up away from the population, so the population can be affected by this. There's a lot you can do, but when you start to go overboard and start to overcompensate with dangerous measures, then things can become a problem. President Biden is and his government is for climate change, but is this president really in charge of what's going on? This is a president who maybe 15-20 years ago was on his ball game, but now, is this the person who should be running the show? Is he running the show? Take a look at this.
We need other industries to transition to get to ultimately a complete zero emissions by 2025.
This week, President Biden gave a speech at Fern Hollow Bridge in Pittsburgh and again showed America and indeed the world that he is a man who knows what he's doing.
Over $1.2 trillion.
$1 billion, 200 billion, $1 trillion, no one's quite sure what he meant. But I'm sure that was the only muddled part of the speech. The rest was crystal clear.
And Bobby, I promised you, he'd been on my back to get this done since I got elected president. Don't forget the lockjaw. So I just think, I'm not sure how we're going to do this, but so long as I couldn't say no.
I don't know what he means, but he wasn't done there. Then the president made this incredible claim.
My grandfather, Finney from Scranton, would really be proud of me right now. No, I'm not joking, he would. By the way, he's an All-American football player, John, in Santa Clara.
No, he wasn't an All-American football player. When Joe says, I'm not joking, he means I'm lying. There are many, many examples of those words being uttered by the president at the end of a verifiable lie. And it wouldn't be a Joe Biden speech without a confused walk-off.
Oh dear.
Pretty much elder abuse at this point. We shouldn't laugh. And here's a little breaking news for you. While that intellectually inept president is in the White House, the US has lost complete control of its southern border.
So sometimes you have to wonder why they fought so hard to get President Trump out of power and get Joe Biden in power as president. Just makes you want to say, Well, I'll leave you with a few sensible words from President Donald Trump that sums up the whole climate change issue. And until the next video, guys, be safe and be blessed.
The Energy Department and what your own government, your own scientists have said about it. They said it's sort of indisputable that humans have contributed to global warming in big ways.
Well, I think we've contributed. We certainly contribute. I mean, there's certain pollutants that go up, and there are certain things that happen, certain things we do that if we weren't here, certainly...
They say the overwhelming cause for the last 50 years.
Well, I don't necessarily agree.
But it doesn't seem like in the report that there's that much of a may to it. Like, it's your government, right? It's your scientists. They work for you. It's your company.
That's okay. That's okay. And I want everybody to report whatever they want. But ultimately, I'm the one that makes that final decision. I can also give you reports where people very much dispute that. You know, you do have scientists that very much dispute it. I want to make sure that we have the cleanest air.
But there really aren't. About that one, there really aren't that many
But Jim,
scientists.
I want to make sure, here's what I want. So you have different views on this, and is there climate change? Yeah. Will it go back like this? I mean, will it change back? Probably, that's what I think. I believe it goes this way, and I believe, yes, man, meaning us people, man and women, to be politically correct, but because everyone says man, but now we have to add women to that one too. Man and women, we do have an impact, but I don't believe the impact is nearly what some say, and other scientists that dispute those findings very strongly.
Have you ordered the government then to?
Well, I haven't seen that.
Include
I haven't
the
seen
scientists.
that. Yeah.
If you have to include the scientists who dispute this as part of the report.
I would always include everybody. I want to hear all sides.
We've had temperatures explode this summer. You may have learned that we broke a world record in the Death Valley, 130 degrees. But even in greater LA, 120 plus degrees. And we're seeing this warming trend make our summers warmer, but also our winters warmer as well. So I think one area of mutual agreement and priority is vegetation management. But I think we want to work with you to really recognize the changing climate and what it means to our forests and actually work together with that science. That science is going to be key, because if we ignore that science and sort of put our head in the sand and think it's all about vegetation management, we're not going to succeed together protecting Californians.
Okay. It'll start getting cooler. You just watch.
I wish science agreed with you.
Well, I don't think science knows, actually. Tom?